Hello everyone, Kelly here, and this is A Lifetime of Lives. Today I'm here with Alicia, and we're going to talk about what life was like before meetings. So Alicia, what was life like before we went to meetings?
I was married to my ex-husband for like 13 years. It was a super unhealthy relationship. I was an addict, he was an addict. My addiction story is not the same as everybody else's or the majority of people in NA. I quit doing drugs and alcohol when I was 17. I grew up in a household like most other addicts with parents who used, and it was a very abusive, crappy home. When I moved out when I was 17, I just decided that I was not going to be like my parents, and I quit drugs and alcohol. But I always kept alcohol as kind of a back burner, so I didn't quit alcohol completely. I would just drink, on occasion. But instead of continuing with drugs and alcohol, what I did was I ended up switching my addiction issues to other non-drug and alcohol related things. And it pretty much was destroying my life. I would go to the point where things that should be healthy were taking over my life and destroying my life. I got wrapped up in a lot of different types of addictions, sex addiction, codependency, a lot of different things over the years. And my life before meetings was pretty much a chaotic mess.
My situation was like I was trying to quit too before, I went to meetings and everything else. But like the reason like I tried to quit was like I would like go to, I'd do like the gym thing. I'm like working out, or I tried like the girlfriend thing. I'm like, I thought that maybe if I got a girlfriend and I get my life together, like everything would work itself out. Or I would like go and like do the health foods thing. I was eating really healthy. I was watching everything I was eating, and I thought that might work. Or I just tried just straight like I'm not using anything at all. And that lasted about 3 weeks, and then I was like back to using worse than before. And so like nothing ever really worked for me, So it was always that struggle that I was going through to when I was using drugs. So so what did you do to stop using?
Okay.
Before meetings, at least.
So obviously, I said that I didn't want to be like my parents. It was really, really, really hard. I technically didn't stop using as far as like my addiction goes, but I stopped using drugs and alcohol. I just quit cold turkey. I went through a lot of withdrawals, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of pacing, a lot of, the shit that you go through when you're withdrawing from drugs. It sucked. It was really difficult, and it was really, really hard. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family who really gave a crap. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I didn't touch alcohol for a couple years, actually, until I thought I was okay enough to drink and control myself and everything. It was really, really difficult, but the main thing is I just stayed focused on the fact that I wanted to be better. I wanted a family, I wanted children, and I didn't want to be an alcoholic. My mom was an alcoholic, my stepdad was a drug addict, my biological dad was an alcoholic. I didn't want to be like them. I was, I guess, pure determination. I leaned on God a lot at the time, and I hadn't even found my faith yet. But the God that I knew then, my higher power and everything else, I leaned on my higher power a lot. And really that was a long time before I even found my faith and got strong in my belief in a God. Even back then I didn't really know who my higher power was. I didn't know anything about the spiritual. I didn't have a strong spiritual connection. So it was just, I guess, willpower and pure determination. But again, the problem was that I didn't technically stop my addictions, because even though I stopped using drugs and alcohol, I just switched my addiction issues to other things. So it wasn't like I actually was successful in quitting my addictions. I just changed them to non-drug and alcohol related things that were just as unhealthy.
How do you think the meetings were like before you even went to meetings?
I actually didn't even know that meetings existed. I knew that AA existed because, they put it on TV and crap like that. So you'd see a commercial or something. Hi, my name's so and so, and I'm an alcoholic. And you'd see it in movies. But other than that, I had no idea. I didn't know they had meetings for. Honestly, I was really naive for even my age. When I first went to a meeting, I was 32. When you took me to my first meeting, and I had no idea. I had no idea they had meetings of NA or AA or any of the other types of meetings, CR. I had no idea they had meetings for other things besides alcohol and drugs. I had no idea that they had meetings for addiction. I was kind of bliss. I only thought that maybe they had Alcoholics Anonymous, but besides that, I didn't know what they did at meetings. I didn't even know meetings existed.
Yeah, my experience is like the first time I ever went to something, like I was trying to stop drugs, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, well, you should go to this," and so I went, and seemed like it was a meeting, but it was like a room. It was probably more of like faith-based something or another, because like we sat in a room, it was circular, and everyone was just talking about their experience. But now that I think back about it, like I don't remember anyone talking about steps or anything else like that. They were just talking about, just stopping to try and stop using drugs, and that was my first experience. And I was probably I would say 19 years old. I was really young, and and then after that, I just didn't think about it was I knew there was those kind of meetings, but it was in the back of my mind. I never really actually connected everything together, hey, maybe this is where you could go that it would stop you or anything like that. My experience was just when I finally was, stopping to use drugs, the court system was after me. And there was a guy in our house that was selling meth out of my dad's house. We didn't even know he was doing it. But anyways, he's like, you know what you should do? He's like, just go to meetings, because that will help take, the judge and everyone off your back. It will help clear everything up. And so basically, so I end up in, an AA meeting basically. And I'm like, man, I got all these guys in there, and I'm just like, I just don't feel like I really belong or really relate in this type of environment. And I've always kind of really felt that way, even as a kid or whatever. I just felt like I didn't really relate, or I didn't really belong. My parents tried, we've tried other things too before. We tried the psychology thing. I went to many psychologists, and none of them worked. I felt like I didn't belong with any of them. One of them I stayed with him because he was giving me candy for a while, and I was like, that's all I cared about. But I didn't really care about anything else. And then I had another, it was just a bunch of psychologists. We tried the medication thing, that didn't really help out that well either. Actually, it didn't help out at all. And then we tried, multiple things, and just none of these things ever worked for me as a child. So before meetings, this was always my experience, and no matter what I did or who I hung out with, even okay, in the beginning, the feeling of some people say they use drugs and they felt like they belonged all of a sudden. My thing is I used drugs so I didn't have to feel. So I didn't feel, and it wasn't because I didn't have to feel. It was just the first time that I ever used something, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Okay, so yeah, for me, I started using drugs and alcohol for similar reasons. I actually didn't see myself as an addict, and didn't even know I was an addict really until after I started going to meetings for a while. So that was when I was 32. But when I started using drugs and alcohol, it was because I grew up in a really abusive home. My stepfather was very physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually abusive from the time I was 8. So my mom was an alcoholic, he was a drug addict, and I can remember being forced to drink whiskey and stuff when I was 2. And so I already knew what it felt like to not feel anything from a very young age. And alcohol and drugs were always prevalent in my house, so it wasn't like I didn't have access to getting them. But I remember when it really took off for me as, oh hey, this is a way I don't have to feel anything, and I can deal with what's going on, and I can deal with the abuse, and just not be there really mentally. I was probably 9, and I remember going and sneaking alcohol and everything else behind my mom. I would drink half of all of her drinks and stuff, and I would smoke pot and get high, and and everything else. And then really started getting addicted to different types of pills and stuff a year or two later after that. And that's how I stayed until I took myself off of everything at 17. But it was for the same reason. It was mainly so I didn't feel. I didn't want to be mentally present when I was being raped or abused or dealing with all the crazy shit that I had to deal with at my age. It was a way for me to kind of escape reality for a while. It wasn't so I could fit in or anything else, because almost all of my drug use was when I was by myself or with just my family, because I wasn't around other people. I was homeschooled. I didn't go to public school. So the majority of my actual addiction days was not going out and partying. It wasn't being around other people. It was literally just getting high, just getting drunk as I could get, so I didn't have to face or mentally be present when I was being abused. I think that's probably another reason why I was able to stop cold turkey, was because it wasn't really a way for me to fit in. No matter what I did, whether I was high or not high, no matter what, I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. Whether it was church, whether it was school, whether it was around my own family, I always felt like there was something different about me, something that was wrong, something that was messed up. I felt like I was crazy for a lot of years. And I can remember my first meeting. That when you took me to my first meeting, I came out like, holy shit, these people think like I do. They act like I do. Like, they throw themselves 110% into everything that they do until they burn out and find something new. Like, I had never met people like me before. And for the first time in my life, I found like I felt like I belonged somewhere. Like, holy crap. And I can remember it was probably about a year into going to meetings, and I had started going to CR because my faith, I'm a Christian now, and my faith in God was is the most important thing to me. And not that my God's not enough, but I realize now that God sent me to NA because that's what I needed to heal me. But I had been in church and everything else, so I felt like I needed to go to another meeting. So when I went to Celebrate Recovery meetings, it was just totally different than the NA meetings. I was going to support you to the NA meetings, and I was getting so much out of it. But at the CR meetings, it was like you said, they didn't really talk about working step work. They didn't talk about anything except for, we need to stop our addiction problems, and God's enough and everything else. And God is enough. But they weren't really talking about how to make any action on anything. And I felt like it was very superficial. Like, I felt like people weren't really being 100% honest about what they were going through in life. It was all like, God's great, everything's great, we're going to get through this. And yes, I have these problems, but it's going to be okay. And that's not what I wanted. I needed people who were real, people who were like me, who struggled, who went through crap, who were real people and not just putting on a front. And I remember at a certain point I had gotten a sponsor who was amazing. She was actually in CR, but she had been through NA for years. And so she was actually able to sponsor me in CR, and is now my current sponsor in NA. And but she was a very real person. And I can remember going to her and I said, I just don't get it. I was like, I relate to everybody in NA. I feel like I belong. They think the way I do. They are like me. I said, but I'm not an addict. And she just started laughing at me. And she's like, I don't know what you mean by you're not an addict, but you're an addict, baby. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't use drugs and alcohol anymore. I mean, I drink on occasion, whenever things get really rough. And she's like, we sat down and we traced out my addictions through my whole life. And I realized, holy crap, I'm an addict. No wonder I get everything. And at that moment, it was just like an aha moment for me. And I remember I stopped going to CR meetings because I really wasn't getting anything out of it anyway. And I started going to NA. I picked up my key tag for the first time, and I decided to make that commitment to stop drinking because I had always kept that as a back burner, like in case of emergencies type thing. And I finally felt like I had found my place. And it was life-changing for me. I mean, having people that understood me, who understood what I was going through, what I had been through, people I could lean on that were real, and people who were just as jacked up as I was.
You didn't really get into it, but I remember we've talked multiple times about like the times that you went through like physical pain, like you got injured, the shelf fell on top of you, and then you tried hydrocodone and you got hooked. That was like years after you had quit everything. You left the family and you quit, right?
No. No, I actually, when I was 12 years old, So a few years after I started drinking to stop using and using pot and everything else, I was in a car accident and I had a 120-pound shelf fall on me at Walmart and it injured my back and neck. Well, the doctors put me on hydrocodones and they kept me on them until I took myself off of them at 17. So I was hardcore addicted to pain pills, prescribed pain pills, and they would give me as many as I wanted. It was like 500 milligrams to do anything, to even touch me or make me feel anything for a lot of years. And then on top of that, I would I was addicted to the muscle relaxers because they were prescribing me all of these pills. And I was like, well, score. I don't even have to go and buy my drugs because I'm getting them from the doctors. And it was a way for me to not have to feel. And I was not using them as prescribed, obviously. But the doctors didn't care because I was underage and they were just, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't care, but they just didn't.
What do you think life would be like without going to meetings? If you didn't have them in your life?
I would still be in my addiction. It would, my life would be a fucking shambles. Before meetings, I was destroying myself. And, I was in a marriage that was very unhealthy. Both of us were addicts. Neither of us realized I was destroying my kid's life. I was destroying his life. And the great thing about it was that it was everybody else's fault but my own. Like, I knew I was fucked up, but, it's the same addict mentality. Yeah, I'm fucked up and I've got these issues, but, really what it boils down to is he's not doing this and he's not doing that, or this person's not doing this, and it's somebody else's fault but my own. Well, whenever I finally got divorced, I started really looking at myself and realizing that my problems that I had been dealing with that were everybody else's fault my entire life were nobody else's fault but my own. And I really felt like I was telling me I needed to change my life, like that I needed to take a deep look at myself, and I need to fix myself, that I was not okay, and that it wasn't everybody else's fault. The only common denominator in everything that happened in my entire fucking life was me, and that obviously I was the problem. And until I started going to NA and started hearing recovery for the first time and hearing from people that, hey, you can change and you can work on things that have happened to you and you don't have to stay the same, and that your addictions don't control you, and that you can stop, I had hope for the first time. And the crazy thing is that I didn't even realize I was a freaking addict at the time, but the message of NA was still reaching me, even with me thinking I wasn't an addict. I would go to meetings with you just to, support you and everything else, and I was getting so much out of it. And it really opened my eyes to how serious my addictions were, because yes, they were non-drug and alcohol related things at the time, but they were destroying my life. And I was extremely codependent, and honestly, if I wouldn't have continued to if I wouldn't have went to meetings, our relationship would have been over. It would have ended. I would be destroying my kids' life. I would have been hopping from one guy to another, trying to find self-value and self-worth and everything in somebody else. I would have been hopping from one addiction to another. I'd probably still be drinking, and I probably would be drinking all the time, because that was the way I coped with shit, and I'd probably be back on pills and shit.
Yeah, for me, they always say that cliche, like, you could be dead, or if I go back, I'm gonna die, and like, I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, for me personally, like, yeah, that's on the scale, like, it could have happened, it could happen, but the thing that's even more, like, they talk about, they say, like, in these meetings, like, jails, institutions, and death, but, like, there's so many things that are, like, just underlining that they just don't tell you about, like, permanent insanity, or, like, I've seen, like, people, like, they've just, like, totally a vegetable for the rest of your life, like, your brain just shuts off, and, like, you just don't work, and you just have to stay like that for the rest of your life due to the drug abuse, or you remain mentally handicapped. You have, like, the mentality of a child, and just due to drug use. Like, these are other things. Like, there's other things that are underlining that they just don't say anything about that make things, like, really creepy. And I think probably one of those things would have happened to me. Something that is just like you just don't think about is, like, one of the worst possible things that could have happened. May or may not, or maybe I'd just be still stuck in my addiction doing what people do in their addiction, which is also just equally as scary, having to live that lifestyle and having just a state of mind that is just completely and utterly not real. And and thinking that things are actually that way.
Thinking things are just normal.
Actually that way. I do want to say to everybody here, I try to say this almost at everything that I go to, or every interview that I have, that there are other ways to go to recovery. Our experience is 12-step. I've had other experiences in other places. I'm not putting any other place down, because there are multiple ways for people to recover. I mean, we talked about faith-based programs. They work for people. Then I'm not saying that they don't work. They do work for people. But also what, like Josh said in the last interview, what works for me may not work for them. And so and then we also, there's not just 12-step programs that you can go to. People have managed to quit on their own just by setting goals, by shedding long and short-term hobbies and accomplishing those hobbies, accomplishing goals, and preparing for life on life's terms just on their own. I haven't met very many people that have done so. Actually, I could probably count them on one hand, but it's possible. It happens sometimes. And people can do it, but that not for me. It's not for me. I tried, and it didn't work for me.
For me, like what you said, I don't believe that there's one way that works for every single person. I believe every person is different, and everybody needs their own path. Even for me, it wasn't like NA just solved my entire world's problems. I needed lots of help, honestly. I was really fucked up. But I was going to NA meetings. I was really in with my church for a long time, and I was going through therapy, and it took all three of those things in a combination to be able to help me become a healthy person. So it wasn't just like NA just fixed everything, but NA was my catalyst. NA was my foundation. It was it gave me a place where I had people I could lean on through my recovery process. It gave me steps and a guideline to work. It gave me, it gave me, for the first time in my life, people who understood, people who were there for me in the middle of the night that I could call if I needed to talk to them while I was working through my stuff and working through my crap and trying to become a healthy person. But I am a very solid believer that, everybody's different, and there are different things for different people, and what works for one person isn't going to work for the next person. That's why we have to kind of be open-minded and supportive of other addicts and what works for them, because my recovery is not your recovery. So I'm a very, very, very strong believer in the fact that there's no
one way.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank everyone for watching. Please leave a comment down below of what you do and you don't like, so I can get a better idea of how to make better footage. So once again, thank you everyone for watching. I hope to see you guys all again here soon.